Welcome to Dream Tale Sleep Stories. Tonight's reading is A Crystal Called Salt. Settle into your bed or sofa and let your shoulders, jaw, and eyelids grow heavy. Inhale slowly. 1, 2, 3. And sigh the air away, allowing the day to fade into quiet dark. With every soft inhale, you invite fresh English phrases. With every gentle exhale, stray thoughts drift farther off. Behind my voice flows a gentle melody, renowned for guiding the mind toward deep relaxation. Keep your eyes closed or follow the captions, whichever feels right. Simply receive the rhythm and resonance of the language. Deep in rest, tonight's phrases will take root like seeds, ready to bloom into stronger English skills with the morning light. When you feel settled, hold that unhurried breath and allow yourself to drift into the tale. A Crystal Called Salt begins now, and when the story's final line has faded, the music will linger a little longer, carrying you gently deeper into sleep. A Crystal Called Salt. I am a crystal of salt, and I have been traveling for longer than you can imagine. My journey began in an ancient sea, millions of years before the first humans walked upon the earth, and it continues still, even as you read these words. This is my story. A tale of transformation, patience, and the remarkable connections between all things in this universe. In the beginning, there was only darkness and warmth. I existed not as a crystal, but as individual atoms, sodium and chlorine, dissolved in the primordial waters of a vast ocean that covered much of what would later become the continents. The sun blazed overhead, though I could not see it then, for I was scattered throughout the water, invisible and formless, waiting for something that I did not yet understand. The ocean in which I drifted was unlike anything that exists today. It was warmer, saltier, and teeming with primitive life forms that had not yet learned to crawl onto land. Giant creatures swam through the depths, their shadows passing over me like clouds across a summer sky. Microscopic organisms multiplied by the billions, their tiny bodies absorbing minerals from the water and releasing others in an endless chemical dance. I remember the currents that carried me across thousands of miles, from the equator to the poles and back again. I remember the volcanic vents that spewed minerals into the water, enriching it with elements from deep within the earth. I remember the rivers that poured fresh water into the sea, diluting the salt concentration in some areas, while evaporation intensified it in others. For millions of years, I remained in this dissolved state, never imagining that I would one day become something more than scattered atoms in an endless ocean. But the earth was changing, as it always does, and my transformation was approaching. The climate began to shift. The region where I drifted grew hotter and drier. The sea became shallower as the water evaporated faster than it could be replenished by rivers and rain. Other dissolved minerals began to crystallize first: gypsum and limestone, settling to the bottom like snow falling in slow motion. Then came my turn. As the concentration of salt in the water increased beyond a critical threshold, the sodium and chlorine atoms began to find each other. It was like a dance, a recognition, a coming together that felt both inevitable and miraculous. One atom of sodium bonded with one atom of chlorine. Then another pair joined them, and another, until we formed a perfect cubic lattice, the characteristic structure of salt crystals that scientists would later study under microscopes. I remember the moment of my crystallization with perfect clarity. There was a sense of solidity, of permanence that I had never experienced before. I was no longer scattered and formless. I was a crystal, a geometric marvel, a tiny cube of matter with faces as flat and regular as if they had been carved by a master craftsman. But I was not alone. Millions upon millions of other crystals were forming around me, settling to the bottom of the evaporating sea like a blanket of white snow. We piled upon each other, layer after layer, one single time, year after year, century after century. The weight of the crystals above pressed down upon those below, compacting us into solid rock. And then the sea disappeared entirely. The last of the water evaporated into the atmosphere, leaving behind a vast plain of salt that sparkled in the sunlight like a field of diamonds. For a brief moment, perhaps a few thousand years, I lay exposed to the sky, feeling the heat of the sun and the occasional drops of rain that dissolved a few of my outer layers before evaporating again. But this exposure was temporary. Sediments began to accumulate above me, sand, clay, and the remains of countless organisms that lived and died in the new environments that formed over the ancient seabed. Layer upon layer of sediment buried me deeper and deeper, cutting me off from the sun and the air. Millions of years passed. Continents drifted across the face of the earth, colliding and separating in a slow-motion dance that reshaped the planet's geography. Mountains rose and eroded away. Ice ages came and went, covering vast regions with glaciers kilometers thick. Species evolved, flourished, and went extinct in an endless cycle of life and death. Through all of this, I waited in the darkness, unchanged and unchanging. Salt is remarkably stable. Unlike many other minerals, it does not transform under pressure or heat the way that limestone becomes marble or sandstone becomes quartzite. I remained exactly as I had been at the moment of my crystallization, a perfect cubic lattice of sodium and chlorine atoms, preserved like a time capsule from an ancient world. I was not entirely alone during those long millennia. Other salt crystals surrounded me, of course, but there were also occasional visitors, drops of ancient seawater trapped in tiny pockets within the salt deposits, bubbles of gas from the primordial atmosphere, and even microscopic organisms that had somehow survived the crystallization process and remained dormant within the salt, waiting for conditions that might allow them to revive. Sometimes I could feel vibrations from far away, earthquakes that shook the continents, volcanic eruptions that sent tremors through the Earth's crust, or the movement of tectonic plates grinding against each other. These vibrations were my only connection to the world above, my only reminder that time was passing and that the Earth was still alive and changing. Then, approximately 10,000 years ago, something remarkable happened. A new species had emerged on the Earth's surface, Homo sapiens, human beings, and they had discovered the value of salt. At first, humans obtained salt from the sea, evaporating seawater in shallow pools, just as the ancient climate had done to create me. They traded salt along routes that stretched across continents, valuing it so highly that it was sometimes used as currency. Roman soldiers were paid partially in salt, giving rise to the word salary. Wars were fought over salt deposits, and cities were built around salt springs. The importance of salt to human civilization cannot be overstated. It was one of the first commodities to be traded over long distances, creating networks of exchange that connected distant peoples and cultures. The ancient Egyptians used salt to preserve mummies, believing that it would help the deceased maintain their physical form in the afterlife. The Chinese discovered how to use salt to preserve food thousands of years ago, enabling them to store vegetables and fish for months at a time. In medieval Europe, salt was so valuable that it was sometimes called white gold. Entire economies were built around its production and trade. The city of Salzburg in Austria takes its name from salt, Salz meaning salt, and Berg meaning castle or fortress. Venice rose to prominence partly because of its control over the salt trade in the Mediterranean. The gabelle, a salt tax in France, was so hated that its abolition was one of the demands of the revolutionaries in 1789. Salt shaped human behavior in ways both obvious and subtle. The word salary comes from the Latin salarium, which referred to the money given to Roman soldiers to buy salt. The expression, "worth his salt," originated from this practice, describing someone who deserved their wages. To sit above the salt or below the salt at a medieval banquet indicated one's social status, as the salt cellar was placed in the middle of the table, with important guests seated closer to it. Eventually, humans discovered the vast deposits of ancient salt buried beneath the Earth's surface, including the deposit where I had been waiting for millions of years. They began to dig mines, carving tunnels through the rock to reach the salt below. I remember the first vibrations of pickaxes in the distance, so different from the natural vibrations I had felt before. They were rhythmic, purposeful, and they were getting closer. Day after day, year after year, the miners advanced, removing tons of salt and rock and carrying it to the surface. Then came the day when a miner's tool struck the rock just centimeters from where I lay. I felt the shock wave pass through my crystal structure, a jolt that awakened me from my long slumber. Light flooded into the tunnel, the first light I had seen in millions of years, and I caught a glimpse of a human face, weathered and dusty, peering at the exposed salt surface with satisfaction. The miner did not notice me individually, of course. I was just one tiny crystal among billions, a speck in a wall of white rock. But his actions would set in motion a series of events that would carry me on the next stage of my journey. The salt was extracted in large blocks, loaded onto carts, and hauled to the surface through a network of tunnels and shafts. I emerged into daylight for the first time in eons, blinking metaphorically in the brightness of a world that had changed beyond recognition. Where once there had been ancient seas and primitive forests, there were now cities and roads, factories and farms. Machines rumbled across the landscape, and humans hurried about their business with an urgency that seemed almost comical to someone who had spent millions of years in patient stillness. The salt blocks were transported to a processing facility where they were crushed into smaller pieces and then ground into fine powder. This process separated me from the larger crystal structure in which I had been embedded, releasing me as an individual grain of salt once again. Though now I was surrounded by millions of other grains, rather than ocean water. The facility was a marvel of human engineering. Massive machines sorted the salt by size and purity, removing impurities and adding anti-caking agents to prevent the grains from clumping together. The noise was overwhelming. The rumble of crushers, the hum of conveyor belts, the hiss of steam used in various purification processes. Workers in hard hats and safety glasses monitored the equipment, making adjustments and ensuring that everything ran smoothly. Quality control was paramount. Samples were taken at regular intervals and analyzed in laboratories to ensure that the salt met strict standards for purity and consistency. Any batch that failed these tests was diverted for industrial use rather than human consumption. The salt destined for food underwent additional processing, including washing, drying, and sometimes iodization, the addition of small amounts of iodine to prevent thyroid disorders. Conveyor belts carried the processed salt to packaging stations, where it was poured into containers of various sizes, from small shakers for household use to large bags for industrial applications. I found myself falling into a cylindrical container with a blue cap, along with thousands of other salt grains. The container was sealed, labeled, and placed into a cardboard box with dozens of identical containers. The box was loaded onto a truck, which joined a fleet of other trucks heading to distribution centers across the country. The journey by truck was unlike anything I had experienced before. Where once I had drifted slowly on ocean currents, I now hurtled along highways at speeds that would have been unimaginable to the ancient sea creatures among which I had first dissolved. The vibrations of the engine and the rhythm of the tires on the road were strangely soothing, a mechanical lullaby for a crystal that had known only the silence of the deep earth. At the distribution center, the boxes were sorted and sent to their final destinations. Grocery stores restaurants, and food manufacturers throughout the region. My particular container was destined for a supermarket in a medium-sized city, where it would sit on a shelf alongside dozens of other salt containers, waiting to be chosen by a customer. The supermarket was a temple of abundance, a monument to humanity's ability to gather resources from every corner of the earth and present them in a single location for easy consumption. Fruits from tropical countries sat beside vegetables from local farms. Meats and fish were displayed in refrigerated cases, while shelves groaned under the weight of canned goods, cereals, and countless other processed foods. I waited on my shelf for several weeks, watching the endless parade of customers push their carts down the aisles. Some paused to examine the salt selection, comparing prices and reading labels, while others grabbed the nearest container without a second thought. Children reached for colorful packages of candy and cereal, while their parents studied lists and calculated budgets. Then one day, a woman with gray-streaked hair and kind eyes stopped in front of my shelf. She picked up my container, examined the label briefly, and placed it in her cart alongside vegetables, pasta, and a bottle of olive oil. I had been chosen. The woman's name, I would later learn, was Eleanor. She was 63 years old, a retired school teacher who lived alone in a modest house on a tree-lined street. Her husband had passed away 5 years earlier, and her children had grown up and moved to other cities. But she remained active and engaged with her community, volunteering at the local library and tending a small vegetable garden in her backyard. Eleanor drove home with her groceries, humming along to the radio as she navigated the familiar streets. She carried the bags into her kitchen, a cozy room with yellow walls and windows overlooking the garden, and began putting everything away in its proper place. My container found a home on a shelf above the stove, next to a pepper grinder and a small jar of dried herbs. Through the transparent plastic, I could see the kitchen in which I would spend the next several months. The worn wooden cutting board, the cast iron skillet that had belonged to Eleanor's mother, the refrigerator covered with photographs of grandchildren. Eleanor was an excellent cook, a skill she had developed over decades of feeding her family. She believed that good food was one of life's greatest pleasures, and she took pride in preparing meals that were both nutritious and delicious. Salt, she understood, was essential to this process, not as a dominant flavor, but as a catalyst that enhanced and harmonized all the other tastes in a dish. The first time she used me was on a Wednesday evening, when she was preparing a simple pasta with vegetables from her garden. She opened my container, poured a small amount into her palm, and then pinched some between her fingers, letting it rain down onto the boiling water like snowflakes falling into a pond. I dissolved almost instantly, the bonds between my sodium and chlorine atoms breaking apart as I returned to the dissolved state I had known so many millions of years ago. But this dissolution was different. It was purposeful, intentional, part of a process that would transform raw ingredients into something greater than the sum of their parts. The pasta absorbed some of my sodium and chlorine atoms as it cooked, becoming more flavorful and satisfying. Eleanor drained the water, carrying most of my dissolved substance away, but enough remained in the pasta to make a noticeable difference. When she added the sautéed vegetables and tossed everything with olive oil and a final pinch of salt, not from my container, but from a different batch, the result was a dish that was simple yet sublime. I watched Eleanor eat her dinner alone at the kitchen table, a book propped open beside her plate. She seemed content, though there was a wistfulness in her eyes that spoke of happier times when the table had been filled with family and conversation. I wondered if she ever thought about where her salt came from, about the millions of years of history contained in each tiny crystal. Over the following months, I participated in dozens of meals. I seasoned soups and stews that simmered on the stove for hours, their aromas filling the kitchen with warmth and comfort. I was rubbed onto the skin of a roast chicken that emerged from the oven, golden and crackling. I was stirred into bread dough that rose slowly on the counter, filling with air bubbles that would give the final loaf its characteristic texture. Each time Eleanor used me, a few more of my crystals dissolved and became part of something larger. This is the fate of salt: to dissolve, to enhance, to become one with the food it seasons. We do not seek to dominate or overpower. We seek only to bring out the best in everything we touch. But the most profound part of my journey was yet to come. When Eleanor ate the food I had seasoned, she was not merely consuming nutrients. She was absorbing me into her own body, making me part of herself in the most intimate way possible. The human body is a remarkable thing, a complex system of organs and cells that requires a precise balance of minerals to function properly. Sodium and chlorine, the atoms that compose me, are essential to this balance. They help regulate blood pressure, maintain the proper amount of fluid in the body, and enable nerve cells to communicate with each other. When Eleanor ate the food I had seasoned, my sodium and chlorine atoms passed through the walls of her small intestine and entered her bloodstream. They were carried to every part of her body: her heart, her brain, her muscles, her skin. They became part of her cells, participating in the electrical signals that allowed her to think, move, and feel. In this way, I became part of Eleanor, and Eleanor became part of me. The boundary between us dissolved just as my crystal structure had dissolved in her cooking water. We were no longer separate entities. We were two expressions of the same fundamental reality. The same atoms arranged in different patterns. This is the secret that salt knows and that humans often forget. Nothing in this universe is truly separate. The atoms that compose your body have been part of countless other things before you. Stars, planets, oceans, rocks, plants, animals. And they will be part of countless other things after you are gone. You are not a fixed, permanent entity. You are a temporary arrangement of matter and energy, a pattern in the cosmic dance. Eleanor did not think about these things as she ate her meals, but she understood them intuitively. She had lived long enough to know that everything is connected, that the food she ate connected her to the farmers who grew it, the workers who processed it, the drivers who transported it, and the ancient earth that provided the raw materials. She gave thanks before each meal, not to any particular deity, but to the web of relationships that made her existence possible. One evening, Eleanor's daughter visited from out of town, bringing her 2 young children, Eleanor's grandchildren, for a week-long stay. The house that had been so quiet suddenly filled with noise and energy, with toys scattered across the floor and small feet running up and down the stairs. Eleanor was overjoyed. She spent hours in the kitchen, preparing the grandchildren's favorite foods: macaroni and cheese, chicken nuggets, chocolate chip cookies. I was used liberally during this week, enhancing each dish with my subtle, essential flavor. The older grandchild, a boy of 7 named Marcus, wandered into the kitchen while Eleanor was cooking and asked what she was doing. Eleanor explained each step of the process, teaching him about the transformation of raw ingredients into delicious meals. When she reached for my container to add salt to the pot, Marcus asked why salt was necessary. "Salt makes everything taste better," Eleanor explained. "But it does more than that. It helps the other flavors come together. It's like the glue that holds a dish together." "Where does salt come from?" Marcus asked. Eleanor paused, realizing that she didn't know the full answer to this question. "From the ocean, I think," she said. "Or from underground, maybe both." She was right, of course, though she didn't know the whole story. The ancient sea, the millions of years of waiting, the long journey from mine to factory to supermarket to her kitchen. She didn't know that the salt she held in her hand was older than the dinosaurs, older than the first fish that crawled onto land, older than almost anything she could imagine. But perhaps she sensed something of this history, some echo of the vast timescales contained in each tiny crystal. She looked at the salt shaker with new appreciation, as if seeing it for the first time. "Salt is amazing, isn't it?" she said to Marcus, "something so simple but so important. We couldn't live without it." Marcus nodded solemnly, then lost interest and ran off to play with his sister. But Eleanor continued to look at the salt for a moment longer, a thoughtful expression on her face. Then she shook her head slightly, smiled, and returned to her cooking. The week passed quickly, as happy times always do. The grandchildren returned home with their mother, and the house fell silent again. But something had changed in Eleanor, a subtle shift in perspective, a deeper appreciation for the ordinary miracles that surrounded her every day. She began to notice things she had overlooked before: the way sunlight fell through the kitchen window in the morning, the smell of rain on the garden soil, the taste of a perfectly ripe tomato from her vegetable patch. She understood, in a way she couldn't quite articulate, that these ordinary moments were extraordinary, that each one was connected to a vast web of natural processes and human activities that made them possible. And she thought about salt, about its long journey from ocean to mountain, to mine, to factory, to store, to her kitchen. She thought about how it enhanced her food, making it more enjoyable and nutritious. She thought about how it was absorbed into her body, becoming part of her cells and participating in the electrical impulses of her nervous system. She did not know that salt could think, could remember, could tell its own story. But she sensed, perhaps, that it was more than just a mineral, that it was a messenger from deep time, a connection to the ancient earth and the vast universe beyond. As for me, I continued my journey. Each time Eleanor used me, more of my crystals dissolved and entered the food chain, eventually becoming part of human bodies, excreted through sweat and urine, washed down drains, carried through sewage systems to treatment plants, and ultimately returned to the ocean from which I had first come. This is the great cycle of salt, the endless journey from sea to land and back again. Some of my atoms have completed this cycle thousands of times, while others have been locked in underground deposits for hundreds of millions of years. But all of them are part of the same system, the same planetary metabolism that circulates water, minerals, and energy through countless forms and configurations. When Eleanor finally finished my container, a process that took nearly a year, she threw the empty plastic cylinder into her recycling bin and bought a new container of salt. She did not think about what had happened to me, about how my atoms were now scattered throughout the environment. Some in her own body, some in the sewer system, some absorbed by her vegetable garden through the compost she made from food scraps. But I remember everything. I remember the ancient ocean and the long darkness underground. I remember the first moment of crystallization and the patient millennia of waiting. I remember the vibrations of the miner's tools and the brightness of my first glimpse of sunlight. I remember the processing facility and the long truck ride and the supermarket shelf. I remember Eleanor's kind eyes and her cozy kitchen and her delicious meals. And I remember Marcus, the curious boy who asked where salt comes from. Perhaps one day he will learn the full answer to his question. The millions of years of geological history, the complex chemistry of crystallization, the global systems of extraction and distribution. Perhaps he will understand that salt is not just a condiment, but a connection to the deep past and a participant in the eternal cycles of matter and energy. Or perhaps he will simply continue to enjoy the way salt enhances his food, unaware of the remarkable story contained in each tiny crystal. Either way, salt will continue its journey, from ocean to cloud to rain to river to sea, from dissolved atoms to solid crystals and back again, from ancient seabeds to modern kitchens and into human bodies. This is my story, but it is also your story. The salt in your body right now has traveled the same kind of journey, through time and space, through countless transformations, through cycles that have been repeating since the earth was young. You are made of ancient stardust, and the salt in your blood once floated in primordial seas. We are all connected, humans and salt, oceans and mountains, past and present and future. The boundaries we perceive are illusions, convenient fictions that help us navigate daily life but obscure the deeper reality of our interconnectedness. I am a crystal of salt, and I have been traveling for longer than you can imagine. My journey will continue long after your brief life has ended, and the atoms that compose you will join me in the endless dance of matter and energy. Perhaps, millions of years from now, some of the sodium and chlorine atoms that are currently part of your body will crystallize once again in some future sea, forming a new salt crystal that will wait in darkness for ages untold before beginning its own remarkable journey. And so the cycle continues, world without end. This is the secret of salt, and it is the secret of everything. Nothing is created, nothing is destroyed, but all things are transformed. We are all travelers on an endless road, and every arrival is also a departure. The next time you reach for the salt shaker, remember this. Remember the ancient seas and the patient millions of years. Remember the miners who brought salt to the surface and the workers who processed and packaged it. Remember the trucks and ships and stores that carried it to your kitchen. And remember that when you eat, you are not just fueling your body. You are participating in a cosmic dance that has been going on since the beginning of time and will continue until the stars burn out. You are eating history, eating geology, eating the transformed remains of ancient oceans. You are eating me, and I am becoming you. This is the miracle of existence, hidden in plain sight in every grain of salt. This is the story that I have been waiting millions of years to tell. And now, at last, I have told it.